Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story that is filled with action, drama, and mystery. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. A horrific massacre opens as officers are gunned down one by one by a masked shooter. DCI Carl Mørck is shot but survives after collapsing unconscious, while his colleague Hardy survives but is left paralyzed and confined to long-term hospital care. After the attack, Carl is forced into mandatory therapy, where he meets cold sarcasm. His therapist, Rachel, quickly sees through him and assumes he isn't sleeping. He's anxious, and he hides his trauma behind bluntness and a false sense of control, hiding under the guise that nothing is wrong. Meanwhile, prosecutor Merritt handles a difficult case involving a husband who is being accused of murdering his wife. Although the evidence points to him, the defense exploits Merritt's emotional instability, and the husband is ultimately acquitted. With this, Merritt becomes agitated as she continues receiving threatening emails and messages that are tied to a past she can't outrun. Even her calm home life is shaken, despite her deep love for her disabled brother William, who is cared for by Claire. After another message, Merritt takes William out on a boat trip to clear her mind, only to receive a chilling text saying, "You can't hide." When Carl returns to the station earlier than expected, he immediately clashes with the shooting team. He then notices a McDonald's cup in a crime scene photo that everyone else overlooked, so he orders them to pull the additional footage and criticizes their lack of attention to detail. Despite his attitude, Carl's instincts and ability to spot missed evidence are quite undeniable. On the other hand, Superintendent Moira Jacobson, who initially opposes the creation of a new cold case department due to staffing shortages, learns that it will have its own budget. This changes her mind, and she immediately supports it, seeing it as the perfect opportunity to move Carl out of her main division. Following this, Carl is told he'll need an assistant and is given a dusty, cluttered basement office. Although he requests Rose, he's instead assigned Akram, who is a former Syrian police officer now working in IT. Carl is wary about it at first, but Akram quickly proves himself as sharp, observant, and skilled with cold cases, which ultimately earns Carl's trust. Then, Akram suggests they reopen the case of Merritt, who disappeared 4 years earlier. Soon, flashbacks of Merritt being in a boat appear. In the present, she is still alive, but is imprisoned in a steel, pressurized tank, still waiting desperately to be found. She uses chalk to write names on the walls, and one name she repeatedly returns to is Kirsty Atkins, who is identified as a former drug addict Merritt once prosecuted. As Merritt recalls her final case before her disappearance, their complicated history gains weight. Merritt believed Kirsty was hiding crucial information tied to the Finch murder trial, and her aggressive interrogation, including the enemies it created, may have contributed to how she ended up with her fate. As Carl and Akram dig deeper into Merritt's case, their basement office gradually becomes a political battleground, with Moira pressing them for progress. Their growing partnership comes into focus, with Akram being measured and diplomatic, while Carl relies on his sharp instincts and blunt force, making an effective balance. Soon, Carl reaches his first stop in the identity of Fergus Dunbar, the original detective on Merritt's case. Fergus insists he handled everything correctly and points out that William, Merritt's disabled brother, was initially considered a suspect but was quickly ruled out because of his condition. He explains that he even brought in divers to search the lake, but found neither Merritt nor her boat. Carl, however, isn't convinced by his story, thinking something about Fergus's confidence feels off, and the gaps in his story only deepen Carl's suspicion. Carl and Akram's next visit is to William's residence in Egley House. There, they meet the receptionist, Maggie, who mentions that Claire, William's longtime caregiver, still visits him every month. This contradicts Administrator Wallace, who insists William cannot have visitors due to his psychological fragility. Claire explains that William suffered permanent brain damage from an old accident. In her 12 years of caring for him, she is certain that Merritt would never abandon him, making Merritt's disappearance even more troubling. She also points out Merritt's history of courtroom missteps, especially the Finch case, where she earned dangerous enemies. While the investigation continues, Carl is also facing struggles at home with his rebellious stepson Jasper, skipping school, and blasting loud music with his girlfriend. Emotionally shut down after the shooting, Carl is in no state to be a parent. In therapy, he hides behind sarcasm, even mocking Rachel's appearance and marriage to dodge any real vulnerability. Their sessions mix sharp humor with uncomfortable honesty, but Carl still refuses to open up. His only genuine emotional outlet is visiting the paralyzed Hardy. With him, Carl quietly admits the guilt he won't acknowledge anywhere else, even leaving Hardy Merritt's case file as a silent confession. Soon, the investigation escalates as Merritt's former boss, Stephen Burns, arrives to question Carl. Moira seizes the opportunity to turn the case into a political showcase, which forces Carl to give a public update on Merritt's disappearance. However, during the statement, Carl's PTSD overwhelms him. At Egley House, William watches the broadcast, and hearing Carl's voice triggers a violent outburst. Because of this, he smashes the television and runs off in distress. Back at the station, Carl spirals into a panic attack, so Akram steps in, grounding him and helping him regain control. Elsewhere, Merritt's captors are growing increasingly brutal. Even though she is already sealed inside a pressurized metal tank, they still deliberately raise the air pressure to break her down. She fights to stay composed, but the physical pain and isolation push her toward despair. Meanwhile, Carl and Akram continue investigating William's sudden disappearance from Egley House. As they review every ferry footage from the route to the island of Mhor, they retrace William and Merritt's last known movements. After examining the clip from multiple angles, they spot one small detail, which is a gust of wind blowing William's hat into the car bay. More alarmingly, Merritt never appears in the footage at all, which is clear evidence that her abductors had been tracking her and watching her every move. While digging into the family's history, Akram discovers that Harry Jennings, a burglar who once broke into the Lingard home, was the cause of William's brain injury. William was badly hurt while trying to protect Merritt, leaving him permanently disabled. Although Harry later died fleeing the police, this incident is an indicator that the Lingard family was already enduring vulnerability to danger. Following that, Carl and Akram visit Merritt's estranged father, Jamie Lingard, who is now a solitary fisherman. He reveals a 12-year estrangement and admits that Merritt once stole her late mother, Lila's necklace, but he remains combative and defensive. After Merritt's disappearance, Jamie confesses he visited William only once, finding it too painful to return. Akram believes William may hold a key to the case, while Carl suspects Jamie is hiding more than he admits. Meanwhile, William wanders back to the ruins of the Lingard family home. There, he discovers old sketches of Merritt, Jamie, and the boobry, which is a legendary Scottish aquatic bird. However, his exploration is cut short when a couple of junkies arrive and take over the property, forcing him to flee once again. At the station, Rose approaches Carl, eager to join the department after growing bored with her desk job. She asks him about current cases, and Carl reluctantly agrees to a trial run, but only agrees if she can survive an entire day without annoying him. Rose eagerly accepts his challenge, marking her return to investigative work. As Carl begins reviewing how Merritt's case was originally handled, doubts start to arise because the initial detective, Fergus Dunbar, had little experience with complex disappearances. With this, Carl assigns Rose to investigate why Fergus was put on the case. He also questions Merritt's former boss, Stephen Burns, who describes Merritt as ambitious and opportunistic, but denies any wrongdoing, offering only partial answers. Meanwhile, Akram follows William to the old Lingard residence, where he discovers his drawings. CCTV footage also confirms that William has been moving around Claire's neighborhood, and Carl and Akram find him hiding in a shed. Quietly, William shares a vital clue about the boobry insignia appearing on a sketch of a hat-wearing man outside his window and on a ferry crew member, showing that Merritt's kidnapper had been tracking the siblings long before her disappearance. As Carl visits the paralyzed Hardy to discuss the case, Hardy suggests Merritt's abduction was opportunistic and occurred when she encountered the wrong person. With limited computer access and Moira reminding Carl to attend therapy, Rachel discreetly points out that, beneath his tough exterior, Carl struggles with deeper unresolved issues. Back at the department, Carl officially sends Rose to Mhor to gather more information and liaise with Officer Cunningham. Examining William's sketch of the boobry, she links it to a boat that was moored near the Lingard residence years earlier. Elsewhere, Merritt suddenly flashes back to when, after retrieving William's hat from the ferry, she is suddenly grabbed by someone whose voice she instantly recognizes. Before she can react, she's struck unconscious. When she awakens, she finds herself trapped inside a pressurized metal tank. She is quite terrified, disoriented, and completely cut off from the outside world. Meanwhile, Carl attends another therapy session with Rachel. Their usual routine quickly gives way to something heavier when Rachel notices how overwhelmed he is, especially with the responsibilities of caring for his stepson, Jasper. Carl has been struggling to balance his family pressures with his unprocessed trauma, but the session ends before any real progress is made. When Carl returns to the station, he accidentally overhears Logan reviewing the McDonald's shooting case. He challenges the initial assumption that a single attacker slipped in through the back while noting that the stacked bins would have made any entry that is very loud and noticeable. The CCTV footage also shows a suspicious individual inside the restaurant 25 minutes before the shooting, which suggests that the timeline is too tight for a lone perpetrator to act. With this, Carl reintroduces a theory that was previously dismissed, stating that the attack was carried out by two individuals, with one likely waiting in a car for the right moment to strike. On the other hand, Rose visits Hardy, who scolds her for underestimating the Mhor investigation. He advises her to earn Officer Cunningham's trust if she wants real cooperation. So she takes his guidance and travels to Mhor to win Cunningham over. Then, she shifts her focus to the Jennings family. There, she discovers that Merritt returned specifically for Clive Jennings' funeral, suggesting they had a close connection. Rose also suspects Merritt may have been involved in the robbery linked to the Jennings and is possibly helping to prevent the family's financial collapse. As Rose later visits the Jennings estate with Colin, who is the constable's son, Colin points out a photo from William's incident with a circled necklace. Although Rose leaves without firm answers, she finds out about the hazardous materials handled by Clive Jennings' company, as there are dead birds scattered around the property, hinting at contamination or another clue. Back home, Carl's neighbor, Martin, and Victoria, Carl's ex, came to confront him. Victoria reminds him that Jasper looked up to him and stayed by his side while he was in the hospital. Shaken, Carl confides in Martin about the guilt from the shooting and how the bullet passed through him, partly saving Hardy but leaving him permanently paralyzed. This admission leaves Martin speechless. Back at Department Q, Rose and Akram review the crime scene photos. The timeline becomes more tangled when they notice the circled necklace, which is quite identical to the one Merritt took from Jamie and returned for on the day of Clive Jennings' funeral, and they find out it originally belonged to Lyall. Although Carl dismisses Rose's theory about the dead birds, the team presses on, focusing on the unresolved pieces surrounding Merritt's disappearance. Soon after, they discover a mysterious letter Merritt received from someone identified only as S. Carl talks to Sabrina about this, a co-worker who admires Merritt's determination, but denies any romantic involvement with her. Instead, she points him to another colleague named Stephen Burns, who provides little useful information. This leads them to Liam Taylor, who admits to having a brief affair with Merritt. He tells them that Merritt actually used a different payment card back then, and went by the alias Lila Graham when they met at the Prince's Garden Hotel. Following this, Carl confirms through the hotel records that Lila Graham did, in fact, check into the room 6 times before Merritt's disappearance. Although Liam had permission to be there, the last person in the room was a man named Sam Haig, who added another layer to the case. Afterwards, Carl and Akram start questioning Paul about Sam Haig. They learn that Sam supposedly died 4 years ago while free solo climbing, and the official story portrays him as a reckless loner who fell to his death without using any equipment. However, there are inconsistencies that emerged as Sam's keys are found missing from both his body and the scene, and his climbing gear remains in his car. With that evidence, it becomes clear that the official account is misleading, and Sam's death was no accident. If you're enjoying this recap so far, please hit like and subscribe for more. Soon after, the flashbacks reveal Merritt's conversations with Sam at Mhor. Sam, who's a journalist for the Scottish Telegraph, probes Merritt about her past to uncover Mhor's secrets, but she remains guarded and defensive about the subject. Their exchange highlights their clashing personalities, with Sam concealing his private life and thriving on unpredictability, and Merritt fiercely protecting her history. This fuels tension, as each sees a reflection of their own guarded nature. In the present, Rachel returns to the basement and finds Rose. Rose admits that she is struggling with OCD and PTSD after she witnessed an elderly pedestrian being killed in a chase years ago, leaving her anxious and afraid to drive since then. Rachel also recognizes Merritt from a past social event, but offers no further details. After Rachel leaves, Rose FaceTimes Hardy to show him the evidence board. Hardy identifies the bird insignia linked to the case, which is a cormorant, and asks Rose to send him scans for further analysis. Later, Carl meets with Hardy, who proposes that Merritt's case could have financial motives behind it. Lila was known to be wealthy while Jamie was poor, and Lila's trust account in the Channel Islands suggests that gaining access to money might be a key factor. Hardy's insight injects new urgency into a trail that had gone cold. Carl grows frustrated because of this. However, he also learns that Hardy has withheld the extent of his rehabilitation and may soon regain mobility without telling anyone. When Moira arrives, she asks for updates on Merritt and scolds Akram for his heavy-handed handling of the junkie situation. But Carl ignores her, refocusing the team on the timeline and Lila's trust fund. Since William fails to manage his finances by himself, Wallace, who's his legal guardian, has full authority over them. Wallace admits to years of monetary theft when confronted. Meanwhile, William is unconscious and surrounded by sketches of the believed murderer, making the situation even more troubling. With this, Carl and the others placed him in Claire's care to guarantee his safety. Meanwhile, Rose decides to look into Merritt's books of accounts and finds an anomaly. She discovers that a laundry facility near the Cowgate actually stopped by a week before Merritt disappeared. Shirley, owner and Kirsty Atkins' mother, reacts furiously at this, recalling Merritt's sudden arrival and departure. Following that, Rose and Akram went to Pentland's prison to meet with Kirsty, who was nearly murdered there as a result of her statements against Finch. She says that individuals with life sentences were paid £500 each to target her. Kirsty nearly took her life because Merritt, who was pledging to help her, abandoned her while she was high. Merritt's previous guilt and the significance of her going missing are brought into focus by Kirsty's testimony. Feeling responsible, Merritt realizes that she must confront confront Sam Hague and share with him what she knows, what is bothering her, and the dangers she faces in her immediate surroundings. In a flashback, Merritt, who is already becoming jittery, meets the journalist Sam Hague. She shares her belief that Kirsty Atkins is in danger as someone within the Crown offices released details about the Finch case. Hearing this, Sam immediately understands the stakes, and if she's right, he knows Merritt could currently be under surveillance already. Then, Merritt refers to the frightening texts and emails she has been receiving for the very first time. With that, Sam abruptly terminates the meeting and recommends that she stay clear of the uncovered cemeteries she typically visits in favor of much less noticeable places to go. Their next meeting was scheduled to take place in a hotel room, booked under Merritt's fake name. Tensed and vulnerable, she discusses Stephen Burns, who Sam believes has a greater connection to Kirsty's case. However, their discussion quickly becomes private as Merritt challenges Sam's trust by stripping off and asking him to do exactly the same, ultimately ending in a sexual encounter. The memory of this event still remains clear in Merritt's face years later, all while she is still trapped within the high-pressure chamber. Meanwhile, Carl attempts to get back in touch with his stepson, Jasper, by contacting him to request a meetup. However, Jasper stays aloof, highlighting their increasing division and Carl's regrets about their difficult relationship. When Carl and Akram go to a church, they find Fergus drinking by himself. Fergus, who had previously stayed away from alcohol, relapsed after a recent assault. He recalls striking back against his attackers after being sucker punched at first. Then, Carl figures out that Fergus had been eliminated from the case to protect him and not to punish him. When Akram goes over Fergus's files, he learns that he was sharp and close to cracking the case, transforming Fergus from a bumbling officer to a competent investigator stifled by politics. In an attempt to remember the day Hardy was shot, Carl goes back to the apartment that was associated with the Leith Park shooting. However, he passes out from feeling overwhelmed. His co-workers happen to see this and realize just how susceptible he is and how anxious he still remains. The shooting also brings up more questions as P.C. Anderson, citing a wellness check, refrained from naming the victim, but the man named Archie Allen was actually a police informant. Despite that, the search quickly goes back to Merritt. Following that, Rose revisits Liam in order to find out if Merritt's decision not to support Kirsty was caused by his wounded self-image. True enough, Liam admits having an outrage and a few subsequent humiliations, but all other evidence still indicates that Stephen Burns was the real motivator behind Kirsty's assaults. Meanwhile, Jasper confronts a man assigned to mistreat Carl. Later, at a diner, Jasper gets violent after a man spits blood in Carl's face and beats him badly until Carl steps in. Rose then comes to Hardy with details regarding Ned Finkel, who is a man left disabled in a hit-and-run that involved Julia Montgomery, Stephen Burns' daughter. This presents a terrifying possibility that Finch might have set up the crash in order to manipulate Stephen, possibly forcing him into carrying out directives, such as targeting Kirsty. When Carl returns to therapy, he finds out that Dr. Sonnenberg is taking Rachel's spot, which upsets him. Meanwhile, Akram and Rose pursue Edmund, who is identified as the man who orchestrated the street dispute. Back at the station, Moira criticizes the group for creating an uproar, mockingly calling them Team Doolally, but refusing to fire anyone. Soon, they find out that Edmund is actually employed by Graham Finch's company named Ballantine Transfer and Security, which links Finch to Stephen Burns and reveals his secret involvement with the incidents. After that, Carl suspends the Merritt investigation for the time being to join the search for the Leith Park shooter. However, none of the men seems to match his memory, thereby making the real shooter still unknown. Elsewhere, Merritt moves into the hyperbaric chamber, which releases a can and creates an intense pressure surge, obviously a sabotage. Her life is now in grave danger, pointing out how quickly time is running out for both herself and the truth she has risked everything to reveal. Soon after, Carl and Akram come to meet Stephen Burns in his office, where they describe the developing connections between Kirsty, Merritt, and Liam Taylor. They ask him about the unsuccessful assault on Kirsty and Graham Finch's alleged power, which goes both within and beyond the jail. While Akram keeps an eye on Burns, Carl assumes the lead in interrogation. However, Burns falters when Akram speaks of Kirsty's addiction, which Carl never disclosed, showing flaws in his polished appearance. The detectives leave with a terrifying realization that the whole truth can only be obtained through Merritt, but that's if she is still alive. On the other hand, Merritt battles within the hyperbaric chamber while trying to remain alive. She strips the writing on the walls while shifting between her memories of growing up and the present moment. Her memories reveal a long-buried secret connection with Harry Jennings, as the two of them were inseparable as kids. They were plotting, smoking, and eventually falling in love. Soon, their connection became intense and reckless, and Jamie gets uneasy as he looks from outside, but Merritt stays unflinching as ever and disregards his warnings. Returning to the present, Carl confronts Graham Finch with messages from Ed Solomon's mobile device, which seem to suggest that Finch issued an order over prisoners to go after Kirsty. Carl links Finch's actions to the current dangers toward Fergus and Jasper. They also find that Sam Hague provided Finch's lawyer with details regarding Kirsty throughout the proceedings, raising questions about his motives. While the full scope of Finch's participation is still unidentified, it surely grows increasingly obvious. On the way back, Carl tries to look into Akram's private past, but finds out only a little about it. Meanwhile, Dennis Piper, a journalist, disrupts the discussion as he claims to have important details for them. Dennis sends a video that reveals Sam Hague's hidden past. Turns out he was once a prisoner at Godhaven Prison, in addition to being a journalist. Dennis, who was blackmailed to get access, advises them to get in touch with Terry Dundee, who is a Godhaven officer who might have critical information. Before following this lead, Carl finally has an honest conversation with Jasper. Despite all the confusion, fighting, and distress, they reconcile, emphasizing how much Jasper cherishes Carl, regardless of how unwilling he is to express it fully to him. Meanwhile, Rose is looking into Sam Hague's passing. At first, it was determined to be a climbing accident, but contradictions quickly developed. Sam's climbing partner, Paul Evans, states that their climbs were beneficial and that Sam had come across someone named Chloe, and not Merritt, at a hotel before his passing. With this new connection, the Merritt-Jennings narrative is once again indicating concealed deceptions. With all of these, Carl quickly becomes frustrated and confused, so he asks for guidance from Rachel. He admits he needs therapy, but the session is often uncomfortable and unanswered, leaving him to cope with his feelings on his own. Within the chamber, Merritt gets a serious tooth infection, so she tries to take it out with pliers as she lacks medical instruments. Panicked and desperate, she accidentally hits the chamber's air pressure pipes, leading to an explosive rupture that renders the wheelchair-bound observer unconscious. Following this, Merritt takes her chance to get away and dials 911, but an additional attacker suddenly shows up, pursuing her and stopping her escape. Soon after, Carl goes to meet Caroline Kerr, who is the witness who changed her testimony in the Leith Park shooting. He goes to ask her about her reasons and relationships after providing a comprehensive proof showing her link to a bigger illicit activity organization controlled by Eugene Arrington, in addition to her prior relationship with Anderson. As it turns out, Caroline's kid is actually Eugene's, and Charlie, who is Eugene's protector, keeps her watched in the garage, an indication of the pressure she is under. Suddenly, Carl has a clear, dreamlike vision during the interrogation of which he sees himself shooting a shadowy figure in the head, supposedly closing the case with merely one fatal action. He walks out of it and instantly writes down notes, showing the close connection between his trauma and his inherent curiosity. Later, when Carl employs a GPS device to locate Rachel and ruin their coffee date, he crosses another boundary. Their conversation becomes extremely tense, as Rachel asks him several inquiries before dismissing him. Carl's declining mental health becomes apparent, rendering it hard for him to differentiate the case and his private life. Meanwhile, Merritt is still in serious danger within the hyperbaric chamber. In an attempt to emotionally destroy her, her captor gives away her cherished necklace while dragging her to come inside and giving a frightening speech regarding their common past. At the same time, it turns out that the elderly woman who was believed to be weak already is actually well and fully involved. Watching Merritt from the control room, turns out Merritt was under constant monitoring for the last 4 years, but losing hold of her necklace is particularly devastating. In a flashback, it is revealed that Merritt grew up in an expensive house, took part in a robbery with Harry Jennings, and had a complex relationship with her brother William, who was frequently given the upper hand. These occurrences show her resilience and strong understanding that kept her alive through years of isolation and psychological abuse. In a hotel flashback, Merritt asks Sam to come along with her and William on a boat. This is a move that demonstrates confidence and perhaps affection, even though Sam turns her down. In the present, Merritt discovers her necklace again, even though it's not clear how she did so, leaving Department Q having trouble connecting the different information into one. Given the fact that Sam Hague was present in Godhaven moments before Merritt's death, Carl begins to believe that he might have both helped and placed Merritt in danger. The potential of an impersonation is also brought up by reports that place Chloe and Merritt with Hague at approximately the same time, which complicates the investigation even more. As the investigation advances, Department Q finds out that the Jennings family has an immediate link to Merritt's captors. For many years, Harry Jennings' brother Lyall and mother Elsa were arranging Merritt's imprisonment. In order to explain how he was capable of moving freely and avoiding pursuit, Lyall spent time acting as Sam Hague. When Merritt ultimately faces him, she demonstrates her determination and mental strength by failing to accept responsibility for what happened to Harry and continuing to believe that he deserves it. Meanwhile, Carl and Akram go to Godhaven to speak with Terry Dundee, who sheds light on Sam Haig's real personality, revealing that he is a manipulative criminal expert at manipulating those in power. According to Dundee, Sam went back again 4 years before to find a particular individual with the name Rocket, which is a name that Lyall Jennings used in the past. When put together with the CCTV footage and previous audio recordings, all point to Lyall's long-running lie. Both Merritt and Department Q begins discovering the full extent of the scheme. Filled with Lyall's persistent fraud, years of deceit, and profound family resentment have all maintained the real story hidden. Even as Carl and the team attempt to retrieve the final pieces of the Jennings family's scheme, Merritt's intelligence and determination are put to the limit. Soon, an interview with Lyall Jennings reveals the extent of his past trauma. He recounts how he and his brother Harry suffered abuse as children, and how their mother punished them by using a hyperbaric chamber, which is now utilized to imprison Merritt. According to Lyall, his upbringing altered his actions and ignited a persistent obsession with Sam Haig, whom he believed he had been pursuing instead of Harry. Lyall was released from Godhaven 10 years ago, per jail records, even though there is no evidence that he was placed in Rampton. By asking Moira about the Leith Park incident, Logan uncovers Anderson's role and heightens the conflict between the departments. Carl's swift findings also appear to be exposing more than Moira is prepared to admit, causing her to appear increasingly uneasy. In the meantime, Cunningham returns to the Jennings home to deliver the mail and look into a 911 call that has been tracked to Ailsa's cell phone. This was the call Merritt made while trying to flee. At first, Ailsa shrugs it off, but when Cunningham hears Merritt screaming on the recording, what happened comes to light, giving him a crucial lead. By raising the degree of heat in the chamber, Lyall and Ailsa make Merritt's condition get worse. Merritt also witnesses Cunningham's entry from within and observes him confront Lyall before Lyall unexpectedly strikes him using a hammer. Later, Carl gathers William, Claire, and the team together to reconsider the evidence. A significant event from years ago comes to light through flashbacks when William accidentally hit Harry with an object during the theft. After that, Lyall continued on the violent beating until Harry stepped in to protect William, getting injuries that left his face permanently disfigured. The memories explain William's ongoing trauma and his disoriented behavior on the ferry, showing the effect that Lyall's assault had on the family over several generations. It also discloses what is true regarding Sam Haig's passing. Unaware that Lyall had become prepared for the abduction of Merritt, Sam reached out to Lyall in hopes to make amends. On the day of Sam's death, Lyall disguised himself, tracked him down, attacked him, and meticulously recreated the event as a climbing accident. He also got rid of Sam's possessions and eliminated any evidence. The Jennings family history is essential to comprehending Merritt's imprisonment. Following the death of Clive Jennings and the incarceration of Ailsa, Lyall developed an approach of coercion involving decompression chambers that left victims unconscious, and this method is currently being employed against Merritt. Shorebird Ocean Systems is also found to be connected to the persistent bird sigil, which links historical trauma with present dangers. Hardy confirms this connection online. Then, Merritt's immediate danger is confirmed when Carl and Akram find Cunningham's body in a warehouse. They also find the hyperbaric chamber and try to regulate its pressure under Hardy's phone direction. Carl protects Akram from a fatal shot when Lyall faces them during the rescue attempt. Ultimately, Merritt is saved from imminent doom when Carl and Akram subdue and execute Lyall. To stabilize her health, Merritt gets placed on a hyperbaric stretcher while William returns with her with the assistance of Moira and her chopper. However, the Jennings family tale comes to a sad end when Ailsa tries to flee but gets caught and ultimately acts self-harm. Following the incident, Carl returns again to stay with Rachel, Jasper, and Martin. Despite suffering from injuries, he feels satisfaction in saving Akram and closing the case. 3 months later, Merritt recovers, so she swings by the station to express her appreciation to each individual except Carl, who is on leave. After developing insight and resiliency from her experience, she desires to make peace with her father, Jamie, and return to Moore with William. Finally, Carl and Stephen Burns get together to talk about Kirsty Atkins. Burns recognizes Carl's perspective as a parent and decides not to report him for his actions with Finch, though he sets out clear demands. Carl also gets the department an appropriate spending plan and acknowledges Akram's skills and devotion and moves him into the role of DI. The group, which comprises Carl, Akram, Rose, and the currently wheelchair-bound Hardy, is now getting ready to take on new cold cases, along with indications that Hardy could handle the Leith Park investigation. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments for more interesting videos like this.